ever cast for a U.S. presidential candidate. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Mike Memoli, who has been covering the Biden campaign since the very beginning. So, Mike, President-elect Joe Biden is taking no breaks today. Already this morning, he's announced a coronavirus task force. What do we know about that and who's going to be on it?
Yeah, Joe, it's not often in a presidential campaign victory speech that you announce a bureaucratic task force, but I think that's what we heard from Biden on Saturday night, and it shows just how much a priority this tackling the pandemic is for this incoming administration. We're going to see the former vice president, the president-elect this morning today, as part of that announcement, making it official the 12 members on this task force. It's going to be co-chaired by Vivek Murthy, he's the former Surgeon General of the United States, David Kessler, a former FDA administrator, and Marcelo Nunez-Smith of Yale University. Some other familiar names on this list as well, Zeke Emanuel for one. But notice Rick Bright, he was that whistleblower who sounded the alarm in the Trump administration, saying that it wasn't being taken seriously enough. So an interesting addition to that group. It's clearly something that the Biden team wants to hit the ground running on. Biden focused so much on his plan for the coronavirus in the closing weeks of the campaign, talking about what he wanted to be ready to do on day one, and this team is going to help him get there.
Now, the Biden transition team is already hitting the ground running. I know you have some exclusive reporting on this morning. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I spoke with two of the people running the transition. Ted Kaufman, he's a former senator, former chief of staff to Biden for years. He's been working since March to try to build out this team. And Johannes Abraham, he's the day-to-day executive director running this. And they gave me some insight into what they've been doing behind the scenes to get ready for this moment. There's 100 transition staff, and that's going to blow up pretty quickly to 350 by Inauguration Day. They've already pre-cleared more than 4,300 people for potential postings in the administration. There are 4,000 federal jobs that actually need to be filled over the course of this administration. They also told me what they've learned from past transition that's guided what they're planning right now, and that includes not necessarily focusing on the big jobs, the cabinet level jobs, but working on those 2,800 non-Senate confirmable positions that are going to be key to having ready for when those principals arrive on day one. And they also want to get that West Wing staff right. That's something that they've learned, especially from the Clinton administration. You have to be ready to have the president supported ready on day one as well.
Mike, we're hearing about several executive orders that President-elect Biden might make once he's in office. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, throughout the campaign, the Biden team was laying out policy papers, often got overlooked because, of course, his campaign message was much bigger picture, the idea of a battle for the soul of America. But if you look back at a lot of those, you're seeing what we're going to expect to see very quickly from a President Biden on January 20th, signing executive orders on a range of fronts, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord for one, taking steps to undo the president's travel ban, the Muslim ban on immigration, and taking action to protect the Dreamers. There's so much that President Trump did by executive order himself, and a new president, as Joe Biden will be, can come in and quickly undo those. That's clearly something that the Biden team has been focusing on beyond getting ready for a legislative agenda that's going to be a much heavier lift, especially because we don't know the makeup of the Senate just yet. It might be at best a 50-50 split that will require a Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to be a tie-breaking vote, but more likely, depending on the outcome in Georgia, it could be a Republican majority there. And so that's going to put a premium on having executive actions that Biden can take to help pretty sweeping agenda that he laid out throughout the campaign.
Now, Mike, I'm going to jump in here. Hey, it's Savannah with one other question for you. I'm hoping that you can just sort of put in context for us the battle that Joe Biden sort of has ahead with being able to get things done. Now, of course, we have within his own party these really progressive type Democrats who are expecting and hoping for one thing from him, as well as tens of millions of Americans who did not vote for him and did not want him to be president. What's that going to look like for him, just the road ahead with what he's going to have to get done with those two dynamics going on?
No, it's a really tough needle to thread for Biden, and that's one reason why he focused so much in his speech on Saturday night about ending this era of demonization. He said that the partisanship, the gridlock we've seen in Washington, he called that a choice. He said it's not inevitable that we're being able to work together, and so it's something that he's committed to. But you mentioned what the pressure he's facing on the left. There was some unity in the closing stretch of the campaign. Of course, everyone understood on the Democratic side the urgency of defeating Donald Trump. But Bernie Sanders, among others, has been clear that as soon as the election was over, they were going to be ready to put the pressure on Biden to be a progressive administration that he promised. That faces the political reality of a potential Republican Senate, the fact that Republicans gain seats in the House in this election as well. It really puts Biden in a tough spot. But he's said throughout the campaign, yes, he's not naive, but he spent his whole career working with Republicans, trying to bridge the gap. I expect to see Biden working over the next few weeks to reach out to some of those Republican senators, especially those he worked with when he was a senator himself, to try to lay the groundwork for potential collaboration, but it's not going to be easy.
For our viewers who don't know, Mike Memoli has been covering Joe Biden since 2007. We have greatly appreciated your reporting during the campaign and look forward to much more as we move forward. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks so much, guys.
Mike hung with us there for just a little bit longer. Now, President Trump is refusing to concede the election. Over the weekend, he tried to claim victory again, tweeting, "I won this election by a lot." Twitter immediately put a warning label on the post and several other posts about election integrity and voter fraud. NBC News political reporter Monica Alba joins us now. Monica, good morning. Good to see you. Now, we haven't heard from President Trump since Joe Biden was projected to win the election, with the exception of these false claims on Twitter. But what do we know about his plan here, about when he may concede, if he's going to? We know that that's not something that's required, but it's traditional. Not that he follows tradition very much, but what do you think we'll hear from him?
Exactly, Savannah. We're not expected to see the president concede anytime soon, telling advisors he plans to continue this fight and to pursue these legal avenues, some of which maintain an openness to an outcome likely, though, that won't be any different than what we're already seeing. And of course, former Vice President Joe Biden is now the president-elect. But what we're now seeing is a campaign effort that continues to rally around the current president, and they are even going to bring back the return, we understand, of campaign-style rallies, which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment. But now you're seeing really the world sort of move on from current President Trump to President-elect Joe Biden, congratulating him and now Vice President-elect Kamala Harris on their victory. And you see that in statements from world leaders, and also in a statement that we saw over the weekend from former President George W. Bush, who also extended his congratulations and signaled the importance of, in a democracy, the moment and a peaceful transition of power. That shows you how some Republicans are handling this moment and this transition, while others continue to urge the president to seek out all of his legal remedies at this time, Savannah, that again, we don't expect to change the outcome of the election, but it's about validating the more than 70 million people who voted for the president and keeping that alive, that fight and push for legal battles as he navigates the next month or so before leaving office in January.
Also, for both parties, knowing exactly what's going to happen in Georgia is going to be something quite important to find out. You know, did that state flip blue? That's something, of course, Democrats are also wondering about. Now, Monica, so in theory, the campaigns are done. We now have a president-elect, but we're learning about President Trump holding campaign-style rallies this week. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, for a president who really relishes this is his kind of favorite activity to do, there wasn't really an expectation that he was going to stop them altogether. Had he been victorious, we were told that the campaign would, of course, launch a thank you